and they're coming up on like an object, and as soon as they lock in on it on their radar, like a bunch more targets pop up on their screen. It basically is actively jamming their radar. He covered David Grush, like he did a documentary on him, and I made a couple different pieces for him, and then I think he actually gave one to David Grush. So I think there's a chance that David Grush actually has one of my UFOs. But the truth is, there's so many sightings, there's so many, conspiracies, there's so many unexplained phenomenon that go on in this world. The world is so big, there's so much going on that truthfully I don't think I'll ever run out. It's just a matter of finding right corners of the internet to kind of poke and prod and see what comes out.
The following is a conversation with Jake Wexler. Jake is the mastermind behind Average Designed Wood, which is an Instagram account that's caught the attention of thousands of people around the world, including people like Joe Rogan. Jake is an industrial engineer who has a unique journey into social media, custom design, and storytelling. Jake has a paranormal twist to his storytelling, with bite-sized cases from history to entertain you whilst he crafts his designs. A unique and fun social media account for which Tom and I follow regularly and enjoy. Jake is highly skilled and makes by far the best UFO scenes, from crafting wood and other materials to make completely unique pieces of art, and has been posting daily since his first campaign to get Joe Rogan to DM him for one, and now until SpaceX agrees to launch one into space. A fun conversation which I think you'll enjoy as well. So, the following is a conversation with Jake Wexler. Jake, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And if it's okay with you, I was just saying before we started that Tom had sent me this. I mean, me and Tom talk regularly on sort of behind the scenes almost every day, pretty much. And he said, "Oh, check out this guy. He's really cool, and he makes these awesome models, and in the woodwork side of things." And so for me, like, I had a workshop in my last house, and I loved woodwork. I was obsessed with it. So when I saw like there's a guy that's cool, that's telling UFO stories, that's making stuff in a workshop, I was like, I'm hooked. So what's your background? Are you a carpenter? Is it a hobby?
So technically, I'm an industrial engineer. I did not use that degree at all. So when I graduated from school, my dad had actually just came up with an idea of his own, which was a wooden beer koozie. I don't know if you guys have like koozies the way we have koozies here, but basically a beer holder. And it seemed fun. We started doing it. The truth is, like, I don't drink, so I didn't really have like a connection to the product, but I did have fun making them because, again, that's just kind of my thing. I just like to make things. So I did that for about 5 years. It just got to a point where it was very repetitive, and I was like, I want to do something else. So that's kind of, I've had when I'm standing in the shop making the same thing over and over again, I have all these ideas in my head of the things that I want to make. But the truth is, by the end of the day, you're so tired. You're like, I want to just go home and relax. So I finally, I don't know how long you guys have been following along, but my original mission was make a wooden UFO every day until Joe Rogan DMs me for one, because he's kind of a UFO nut. And the whole idea was he's never going to, so it's going to keep me in the shop every day. And then, 154 days later, he actually ended up reaching out, which was pretty cool. But it was just kind of a way for me to kind of release some of my creativity, to delve into some of the stuff that I enjoy reading about. Like, I love the UFOs and, all kinds of conspiracy stuff. So I just really enjoy that. But yeah, it was just, something for me to do. And lo and behold, it kind of turned into, it started to blow up, and this is actually my full-time gig now. So this is what I do.
Awesome. Where did it start? So where did your interest in UFOs start, and the sort of UAP subject?
I think it's been forever. I don't know what it is, but like I feel like people with like a creative mind kind of have this idea, like you kind of wish there was more out there. I don't know if that's everybody or if it's just me, but every book I've ever read has been a science fiction book. I've watched every single episode of Star Trek. I love Star Wars. Like, I just like the idea of, you know, I guess exploring what we don't know about. And obviously UFOs, UAPs, that's exactly what it is. So it's just something, I kind of have I coined a term, I think, but it's a conspiracy optimist. So conspiracy theorist, you think of like some crazy person, right? Kind of off their, lost their marbles. But I think a conspiracy optimist is someone who just really, really wants to believe in all this kind of stuff. I remain skeptical. So you'll hear a lot in the videos that I talk about. I'll kind of, I'll make a point and then I'll counter it with, but it might not be real. I want to see the evidence, but at the same time, I'm optimistic that we are going to find something, you know.
So I was one of your early birds, really, dude, because I sort of spend a lot of time restoring old guitars. So the
Oh, sweet.
algorithm was like flying saucers, woodwork. Oh, he's gonna love this guy. So
I
it's
kind of
been
combined it
amazing
all. Yeah.
watching. Yeah, yeah, it's been amazing watching it grow so much. But where do you get all that trivia? Because every day there's another amazing nugget of like trivia.
I mean, I'm always afraid that I'm going to run out because, one every day is kind of a lot. But the truth is, there's so many sightings, there's so many, conspiracies, there's so many unexplained phenomenon that go on in this world. The world is so big, there's so much going on that truthfully, I don't think I'll ever run out. It's just a matter of finding right corners of the internet to kind of poke and prod and see what comes out. There's definitely a part of me that like, okay, I've covered some of the bigger ones. So now I'm kind of getting more and more niche, which I think is kind of cool because I'm bringing to light some stories that probably a lot of people haven't heard of. Um, but yeah, it's just a lot of research, a lot of digging. I'm definitely not an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. If you ask me a question about a video I did a month ago, I probably wouldn't remember much of it. I might remember the names and the dates. I just kind of have like a general, idea of all this kind of crazy stuff. But yeah.
So is it kind of as wide as it appears? Like you're into sort of Bigfoot and sources and that. Is there one particular area that interests you more than others?
So it's definitely all the weird stuff. But like I said before, like the sci-fi, the UFOs, the UAPs, like I just like the idea, every time I stop and start to think, our world and space and how it never ends, it just kind of boggles the mind. So to think that there's something out there that might have a better understanding of it that we do, I definitely kind of lean more towards the UFO side of things. I see you have a UFO model behind you, so I think we're kind of on the same page there.
Where did it kind of start? So you had this idea in your head, I want to make these, I want to integrate it into Instagram. Was that like a conversation you had with friends or family? Do you think I'm just going to do it, or did it sort of build or
um,
grow?
I told my wife that was pretty much it. But it started out. I still had I was still working the other job, so I'd finish up at like 4 or 5, and then I'd just stay in the shop and just keep going. So it wasn't. It just one day I was like, today's going to be the day. I kept telling myself I was going to do it, and then I'll do it tomorrow, and I was like, I just have to do it right now. You know what I mean? And then I haven't stopped since. So yeah, it just kind of pick the day and we're off and running. And if you look at my early videos when I was figuring out like how I was going to format it, it closely resembles what I'm doing now, but it was much worse. If you watch my first video, it's literally me sitting there and like my voice, there's no inflection. I sound very monotone, and it's just me saying something about how UFOs are now called UAPs and we didn't ask them what they wanted to be called. And it was just the dumbest thing. And, the video was short. I think it was 30 seconds. And then, as my video editing got better and better, it kind of turned into what you're seeing now.
Yeah. Have you got kind of plans for where to take this, or are you kind of happy with just maintaining what you're doing now and telling stories? And I know you said you don't think you'll ever kind of run out of stories, and I agree.
Yeah.
There's so much out there when you go down those rabbit holes. But have you got like a goal of where you want to take it next?
So I'll tell you right up front, I love what I'm doing right now. I'm like truly enjoying every minute of it. I do recently, I used to tell a story every single day. Days and Saturdays, I just post like a video showing what I made that day. And it actually gives me a little bit more time in the afternoon. So I might I'm thinking about dialing it back a little bit more. So maybe there's only 3 or 4 stories per week. But that, all that research, which is probably like an extra 2 to 3 hours every night,
Mhm.
that can be put into something else. I really enjoy writing, so yeah, I've had ideas to do like a short story, a compilation of short stories that I've written. I have a really cool idea for a podcast, which I can't tell you about so no one steals the idea, but that's something I'd want to get into as well. There's so much kind of along the same lines that I still want to pursue that I haven't gotten to yet, but I still plan to. So, obviously I'm going to keep pumping out UFOs. If SpaceX takes me up on my deal and they decide to send one to space, we'll just pick another goal. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but we'll see. But yeah, I have no plans on stopping, and only continue to grow is kind of my thing right now.
Love it. So, without getting too far down it, because I've got so many woodworky questions. Like, you've got resin curing and oil curing, and every day you're making like a perfectly finished thing, and it blows my mind, dude. How long must that take you a day?
So there's a lot going on up here because I'm trying to plan, the next couple days ahead, especially with the resin. I have to wait for it to cure overnight at least. But in the beginning of every week, I kind of sit down and I write out like a general idea of what I'm going to make that week. I don't really think about what I'm going to talk about until that night. If I can make it follow the same theme as the UFO, that's great. If not, yeah, it's still, same kind of video. But um,
Like, because they're so detailed, and you've got resin on one, and like all these different
oh,
oils curing, and the different layered woods. But every day you're coming out with a finished one, and it blows my mind how you get that
so
consistency.
yeah, it's really just I, I can't say it any other way. I've gotten good at it. You know what I mean? Like in the very beginning, there was a lot more decisions to be made because I was like, okay, this matched with, is this wood going to look good with this wood, this color? Should it be over here? Should it be angled? Should it be hovering? Should it be crashed? There was like so many decisions to be made. But as I've, gotten better and better and better, those I just kind of see it in my head. Like I don't have to take the time to make those decisions. So it's much easier for me to plan it out because I kind of see it ahead of time. So, obviously it's still a lot of work. It takes a while. There's a lot of planning and, it does happen a lot, the whole paralysis by analysis when there's like 9 different things to do. So I just sit there and try, for like 20 minutes trying to figure out what I should be doing next. But, it's, like I said, it's just practice, repetition, and it's gotten to a point now where it just kind of comes naturally.
Yeah.
And have you got a favorite one that you've done so far, or is that a bad question considering somebody owns that? And
So I have like, I think I have a new favorite every week. Like I put it in the post, but like I'll make one and I'm like, okay, this is obviously the best one I've ever made and will ever make. And then, a week and a half later, I'm like, well, actually it's this one. And in fact, the one that I'm going to be putting up tomorrow, which I'll be happy to show you guys at the end of this because this isn't going to come out and ruin the video, but might be one of my favorite ones I've ever made. Obviously the bigger ones are always kind of more eye catching. But I've definitely started to hone in on a little bit more detail. Just figuring out the different textures and effects as far as like, how to texture the wood. I use a lot of Dremel, how to texture the resin to make it look like water or whatever I want it to look like. What kind of features I'm going to add. But, do I have a favorite? My day, oh, what was it? Oh, it wasn't even like a day whatever. It was just like one of the biggest ones I've ever made. And it was like this huge detailed crash scene. Yeah, if you scrolled a little bit back, you could see it, or I could send you some pictures. But that's probably up there. I just finished up the Star Destroyer. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but that's definitely a favorite. It's magnetic levitation, so that actually just floats above the wood. And then I did a vote recently, so next is going to be the Millennium Falcon. So I think that one has potential as well.
Awesome. Where did you when you're talking, obviously coming out and speaking to people on the internet, or kind of speaking to a camera which essentially goes out to many dozens of, if not hundreds of thousands of people.
Thank you for that.
How do you how, I mean, it's the same for me. Like when I first started doing it, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna, and it's really embarrassing, but you kind of get used to doing it. But then
Yeah,
there's that realization that your friends and your family and stuff are kind of going to figure it out and going to see it, and it'll be shared around. And eventually everyone's going to know that you're doing this thing. And I
yeah.
know that it's the same for Tom, the same for me. And how, I mean, are you cool with that, with people kind of knowing that you do this? And was that you know, did that come naturally to you, or was it kind of a weird feeling? Because it's weird
Uh,
for me.
well, I hate my voice. Apparently, people have told me I have a good like lecturing voice, so that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. But still, every time I listen back, I'm like, God, this guy just has to shut the hell up. But it's definitely. I think it was awkward in the beginning, but I have a great friend who, like, right after I think it was like the third video, I saw them in person, and they were like, "Oh my God, I love what you're doing." And this is still when my videos were, in my opinion, terrible. And right there, I was like, well, if one person likes it, friend of mine, then, what's the worst that could happen? And I never thought this would get to the point that it got. So I was never really worried about too many people seeing it. And, the more people that do see it, I'm like, okay, well, obviously I have something here that people are interested in. And, they they can stand listening to me for a minute and a half a day. You know, maybe
Yeah.
they just mute it and read the captions for all I know. But
And this sort of stigma side of it, does that, how do you feel about that? Or do you feel that there's still a sort of stigma? Because there's one thing kind of creating awesome pieces of
yeah,
art, you know, essentially, and putting that out there. But then it's another thing kind of going, and this is what I'm interested in, and let's talk about the
right.
UFOs and the aliens. You know, they're two totally different things. The woodwork is something that everyone can get on board and go, that's
Yeah.
cool. And then the other stuff is like, well, that's a bit weird, you know.
So
How do you feel about that?
I think I do a good job, or at least I try to do a good job of kind of defining myself as a skeptic. You know, I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. There has been a few stories that I've looked into where they don't really have an explanation, and those ones I think are really interesting. But I think as long as people realize that I'm kind of taking a step back from these stories and saying, okay, you know, this would be really neat, or there is some evidence here, but we can't really prove anything. I'm not worried about anybody thinking I'm a nut. You know, even though I am.
You got a particular, so let's say hypothetically, then you could go to any supposedly weird thing that's happened, whether it's photographing Bigfoot or being at Betty and Barney Hill's side of their car. What would you go for if you could have a good look at any of these cases?
Oh, no, I was not recently, maybe a couple months ago, I looked into there was this woman who she was a scientist or a physicist, and it looked as though she had kind of discovered how to create an anti-gravity field. And like there was no one out there saying that it wouldn't work, and no one was disproving it. And they even said that they came up with some like actual prototypes that worked. So like I think I'd like to see some of that research because until it's disproven by anybody a little bit more legitimate, like I have to kind of believe that they've figured out how to do anti-gravity, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I forget what her name was. Like I said, I'm not an encyclopedia. I forget most of these things as soon as I read them. And then obviously I'd like to take a look at some of those secret government files, which they're keeping so hidden from us.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get on to that then. So, have you been following the stuff in Congress and the whistleblowers and stuff? Have you been following that?
Yeah, I do my best. In fact, I believe so. There's a guy named Amar Kandil who's like a journalist, and he did some videos, and I believe he covered David Grush, like he did a documentary on him, and I made a couple different pieces for him, and then I think he actually gave one to David Grush. So I think there's a chance that David Grush actually has one of my UFOs, which is kind
Awesome.
of cool. I follow it as closely as I can. I mostly pay attention to like the bigger news, unless it comes up like while I'm looking into what I'm going to talk about the next day. Obviously, I do get very distracted in the shop, so I don't always have a chance to like be right up, on the cutting edge of what's happening. But I do find a lot of it really interesting. And again, I'm just waiting for that like definitive proof. You know what I mean? Like I'm chasing that.
Yeah. I think we might be waiting a while
It
from
certainly,
the official sources. Yeah, I
yeah.
think.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, obviously with the election coming up, everyone who might get into office is saying that they're going to release all the files, and no one ever does. you know,
Yeah.
so I think I don't know. We need something to happen. I'm still waiting on my UFO sighting. Hasn't happened yet. But when I get one, I'm going to make sure it's the clearest video possible.
Yeah, I'm in exactly the same position. I think Tom's had his sightings, and I'm like, I've not had one yet. I need to.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone's
Like I want to
sending
see
me
it.
all of their footage, and
My
I'm seeing
dad says he's had one.
thousands.
Yeah, my dad said he had one when he was younger, and he's talked about it a lot. Um, but it was a long time ago, and they said it was like a weather balloon or something. And you just talked to Jaime
Yeah.
Busan, right? I mean, that's really interesting stuff too with the mummies.
Mm.
Obviously he's saying that it sounded like you were a little skeptical yourself, but I mean, if that stuff's real, I mean, even if it's from Earth, that's interesting. You know what I mean? That's a whole different thing.
That's
Yeah.
totally where I'm at with it. Yeah, it's a jump to say they're extraterrestrial, especially when they've got like three fingers and no thumbs.
Yeah,
So you can't see riveting a flying saucer together or whatever. But
true.
wherever they fit in the kind of historical biosphere, if they are a real little creature, that's fascinating to me, and
Yeah,
that's where I'm coming at really with it, is just like, where do they fit? What were they doing there? Like he said, it's the little gems where he said like they had burns on the bottom of their feet and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that
And
was
that was
interesting.
just like, how did they get there? You know, did they not have shoe? Like it
Yeah.
just, it asks a million questions. So yeah, that was really
But then, like,
interesting.
it sounded, from what I gathered, it sounded like the mummies that were presented to Congress or wherever it was, they were deemed to be fake. But then he said that those weren't the real one, like those weren't the ones that he was trying to show them. Is that what he was saying?
So what I believe happened, and I'm not 100% on it, is that so there was a guy basically bodged up to replicas and dressed them up in like Mexican clothes
Yeah,
and stuff like that. And then the Ministry of Culture took them off him, and in from what Jaime was saying, in an attempt to kind of discredit them, they had them tested despite the guy that was selling them saying, "No, look, they're souvenirs. This
right.
is I made them." And then the national news and stuff absolutely piled on saying they're dolls. They've been proved to be fake.
Right.
Whereas the stuff that has been sort of X-rayed and CAT scanned is all they've all been found. They're all sort of different and they're kept in different laboratories and stuff from what he was saying. But it's
Interesting.
fascinating.
I want to see one.
Yeah, he was
There's so
also
many
saying that
things.
there's so many of them as well, and they keep finding these new ones, and there's other ones that
Right.
and it, just to test one, it must take just such a long time and lots of
Oh
different
yeah.
experts and reports. So if you've got so many of them and it takes such a long time just for one, you can understand that it's going to be a slow process. And funny enough, I was talking to messaging back and forward with Jaime today about trying to arrange with one of his or a couple of his experts to kind of present us some of the science behind it.
Yeah.
So that would be a really good. It's all good and well saying that this is what it is and this is what they're telling us. Like, well, we need more of that data driven stuff, but in like a way we can digest. Because I'm not a scientist, I can't read this stuff. I need a scientist that can tell the story in a way that I understand it. You know, talk to me like I'm a
Right.
child, and so I can understand
Yeah.
it. And that's kind of, I think that will make a big difference for everybody really understanding what these things are. And it certainly seems like the latest ones are a lot more compelling than the earlier
Hmm.
ones. That's how it seems
Interesting.
anyway. Yeah. So let's I'm going to ask you a speculative question if that's okay. And then
Sure.
have you kind of narrowed down your view on what UFOs, UAPs might represent? Are you there, or are you still kind of, you're still forming that opinion? Have you narrowed it?
I've kind of gotten stuck on, like, obviously like the Tic Tac and like all those. I've kind of gotten hung up on those because I actually have a brother-in-law who's a Navy pilot, and he doesn't have any personal sightings, but he knows a couple guys who have. And they were saying, like, can I share like the story with you guys real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah,
You
absolutely.
probably want to hear it, but so one of his buddies flew out on like a mission from like an air. I think it was East Coast, might have been West Coast. I don't remember. But you had like a higher up who wanted to, like, I guess, tag along. So he was in the back seat, and the guy was flying the jet, and they're coming up on like an object, and as soon as they lock in on it on their radar, like a bunch more targets pop up on their screen. It basically is actively jamming their radar. And then eventually they got close enough that they could actually see it. So both of them took their phones out and got videos of this thing. And what the buddy said it looked like was basically like the typical tic tac shape, but it had stuff kind of like hanging off of it. As soon as they landed, the higher up guy got on his phone, and they confiscated the pilot's phone, and he never saw it again.
Oh, wow.
So like there was something. So in my head, I'm like, I think they know what these are, but we're not supposed to know. Like it almost seems very top secret drone kind of thing to me. So in my head, what do they represent? Well, I think it's an advanced technology that we have. How did we get it? I don't know. Did we figure it out ourselves? Maybe. Um, but then again, there's been sightings going back centuries, obviously. So have we been visited by something from, off the planet? Possibly. Has it been something on the planet? There's just so many different rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because it could be like a mixture of multiple things, and I think that's
Yeah.
part of the issue. Is it? They could have, same with the Tic Tac, Commander Fravor and Alex Dietrich. They could
Yeah.
have seen something that was human made, that was reverse engineered, that was off world. It could be multiple things, and I think
Yeah.
that's why there's this massive kind of need.
But like all seeing the same thing, it's something. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I think they know it. They just won't tell us. And when I say they, I mean like the government people, I guess. Someone's hiding it from us.
Yeah, and it's the shapes, isn't it? Like the old school cigar, and then it's the tic tac, and then it's the gas cylinder, the propane tank.
Yeah.
They just go back years and years and years, and they just those little things. When you're paying attention to it, as we are, because it's something that we're interested in, you can pick up on those small little sort of connections here and there, and fascinating, really, really fascinating. Look, Jake, I'm conscious of your time. Just so that people listening that don't know, where would be the best place to come and find you? And have you got any sort of, you mentioned your projects you've got coming up, and is there any other, you got like a website or anything like that, or is it mostly your IG?
Yeah, so it's pretty much everything I post is on my Instagram. It's at Average Designed Wood. The company that I was running before is called Well Designed Wood. So this was supposed to be just kind of a spinoff, but then it became something bigger. And every day, Mondays and Fridays, I post the piece on my eBay, and those links can be found on my Instagram. And then the rest of the days at 11:15 every morning Eastern time. I post my listings on my Etsy, which is also Average Designed Wood, and those links are also in my profile. So those are all the places you can find me.
Awesome. Yep. Nice one. Well, Jake, it's been a real pleasure, man. Hopefully we'll speak again in the future, and take care of yourself, man. I'll keep watching, and I love your stuff, man. I really do.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you guys for having the time to talk.
No worries, man.
Keep
Our
it up,
pleasure.
dude. See you soon.
Cool.
Take care, man.
You.